Imagine waking up inside a city of 2 million people trapped deep behind enemy lines. An island of freedom surrounded by a power that decides overnight to cut everything off. No roads, no railways, no canals, no trucks coming in with food, no coal to heat homes, no fuel to keep lights on and hospitals running. Now imagine this isn't a movie pitch or an alternate history fantasy. This really happened, and it became one of the most brutal tests of the early Cold War. Whether West Berlin would survive as a free city or be forced to surrender without a single shot being fired. On June 24, 1948, the Soviet Union shut down every land, rail, and water route linking West Berlin to the western zones of Germany. The message was simple, cold, and strategic. You can keep the city if you can keep it alive. The world hovered dangerously close to war, and the United States faced two awful choices: abandon West Berlin and watch freedom collapse, or push back and risk a direct confrontation. Then America did something that, to this day, hits the American audience right in the chest when they realize the scale of it. The answer wasn't tanks. It wasn't bombs. It was discipline, engineering, and relentless work. The United States and its allies turned the sky into a highway. And for nearly 15 months, they beat a siege with airplanes. Berlin wasn't just a place on a map in 1948. It was a symbol, a pressure point, a city split among the Western Allies, America, Britain, and France, and the Soviet Union. But West Berlin had one problem that made it uniquely vulnerable: geography. It was a Western-held enclave, sitting inside Soviet-controlled territory. That meant the entire population depended on access routes that could be choked off, and the Soviets decided to choke them. Suddenly, around 2 million civilians were isolated. And the fear wasn't abstract. It was painfully ordinary. It was the empty shelves, the failing power, the cold apartments, the anxiety of parents trying to feed children in a city that was being squeezed day by day. The Soviet strategy wasn't just military, it was psychological and logistical. A modern siege designed to wear people down until surrender felt like the only way to breathe again. For the Western Allies, letting West Berlin fall would send a message that would echo across Europe. Pressure works, isolation wins, and freedom can be strangled quietly. 2 days later, on June 26, 1948, the response began. Operation Vittles, known to history as the Berlin Airlift. Using 3 air corridors permitted under post-war agreements, Allied aircraft started flying supplies directly into West Berlin. But what sounds straightforward in a sentence is almost insane in reality. Supplying a major city by air isn't like sending aid to a small town. It's math. It's survival measured in tons per day. Food, coal, fuel, medicine. Delivered not once, not twice, but every single day without fail. Any disruption could cause panic. Any serious bottleneck could bring the whole system down. And every plane in the air carried more than cargo. It carried a political statement. You may block the ground, but you do not own the sky. This is where the story becomes unmistakably American, because the airlift didn't succeed by trying harder. It succeeded because it was redesigned into a machine. General William H. Tunner took a risky operation and turned it into a system with the efficiency of an assembly line. He enforced strict flight procedures, disciplined schedules, and an unforgiving rhythm that left no room for improvisation. The goal wasn't heroics, the goal was reliability. At Tempelhof Airport, the tempo became legendary, In the most intense stretches, one aircraft could land every 45 seconds. 45 seconds. Think about what that means. A city kept alive by a timetable. Pilots fought weather and fatigue. Ground crews worked in relentless shifts. Maintenance teams kept aircraft flying again and again. One mistake could close a runway and cascade into shortages. This was a war without bullets. But it was not without danger, stress, or sacrifice. The airlift demanded a kind of courage that isn't glamorous. Showing up again and again and again until the impossible becomes routine. The numbers that came out of Operation Vittles still sound like fiction when you say them out loud. And that's exactly why Americans lean in. The initial goal was 3,475 tons of supplies per day. Then the operation grew. Faster loading, tighter scheduling, more aircraft, better coordination, until it shattered expectations. In April 1949, the airlift hit a stunning record. 12,941 tons delivered in a single day. Food, coal, fuel. The supplies that separate a functioning city from a city that collapses. Over the course of the airlift, more than 250,000 flights took off and landed in a punishing rhythm. And the total amount transported reached about 2.3 million tons. The United States carried roughly 1.7 million tons of that total, working alongside Britain's Royal Air Force, which ran its own effort known as plain fare. Aircraft like the C-47 and C-54 became the workhorses of this air bridge, followed later by even larger transports as the operation scaled. It wasn't one dramatic mission. It was the same mission repeated at industrial scale until the blockade broke. And then, in the middle of all that steel, fuel, and tonnage, the story gained a human moment so powerful it became symbolic, a moment that turns viewers into subscribers. A U.S. lieutenant named Gail S. Halverson started dropping candy tied to small parachutes for Berlin's children. It was simple. It was personal. It was an act of kindness fallen from the sky in a city being squeezed by fear. That gesture became known as Operation Little Vittles, and it created a kind of moral contrast that the world could understand instantly. This wasn't just about delivering coal. It was about delivering hope. Children looked up and saw that the West hadn't forgotten them. In a siege built on pressure and despair, a small parachute carrying candy became a weapon of empathy. And it strengthened public support for the airlift in a way no speech ever could. On May 12, 1949, the Soviet blockade was officially lifted. The strategy had failed. West Berlin didn't break. The Allies didn't fire their way through the crisis. They outworked it. But the airlift didn't end the same day, because the Allies understood something the Soviets had tried to exploit. Supply is vulnerability. So the airlift continued until September 30th, 1949, building stockpiles and ensuring that West Berlin wouldn't be hostage to the next sudden shutdown. What Operation Vittles ultimately proved wasn't just that the Allies could keep a city alive. It proved that resolve could be expressed through logistics, and that freedom could be defended without triggering a war. The airlift helped shape the Cold War, strengthened the Western Alliance, and became one of the moments that pushed history toward the formation of NATO in 1949. Berlin became a symbol of democratic resistance, and America, at its best, became associated with a particular kind of power. Not only the power to fight, but the power to build systems so strong that a siege can't win. If you want to understand why Americans see their country as exceptional, this is one of the purest answers you can give without exaggeration. Because this wasn't a victory won by conquering territory. It was a victory won by keeping a promise. A city was fed through the sky. A blockade was defeated without a shot fired. And every 45 seconds, another aircraft came down the runway, carrying the same quiet message to the world. We will not abandon you.